I'll start off because when you first got involved with this committee, tell us the genesis for getting it started, what the initial goal was, and how you feel like it's helped relations in the Carolinas.
Well, I initially joined it because I've been always I was raised as a person to always give back to my community wherever I'm at. So pretty much coming to the Carolina Panthers, that offered me a means of making an impact on the community in my own way. So that's initially the reasons why I joined the committee.
Well, what was the genesis behind this committee starting? I mean, it's 2018, and I guess it wasn't there before. Was it anything to do with what was going on with Jerry Richardson and the new ownership, or whose idea?
No, it had nothing to do with that. Like I said, I joined this as a means to just help impact the community in a positive way. And the community that I'm referring to is, namely the underserved communities of the Carolinas. So having that set up within the organization kind of facilitated the whole idea of me trying to, get involved with the community.
Hey, Chris, I think you were on when Andre was speaking, and he talked about getting a phone call Monday from David Tepper in support of you guys. How different is that than what the kind of atmosphere and the tone was when Jerry Richardson owned the team?
I am not sure. I really didn't have a speaking relationship with Jerry Richardson, but what I can tell you is that Mr. Tepper called me as well a few days ago and pretty much offered support and pretty much empathized and acknowledged that there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in the society that we live in. And having the owner of the organization personally call you and have a conversation about it, I think that speaks volumes to the person he is and the organization that the Panthers is as well.
Chris, Steve Reid from the Associated Press. You had began your career with the New Orleans Saints, so I know you got to know Drew at least a little bit. I was curious, what was your take on his comments and then his apology that followed?
I'm glad that he issued an apology. I think it takes somebody of character in a way to acknowledge that they're wrong and acknowledge that they messed up in a way. And to Andre's point, everybody has their own perspective, so I can't really take that away from him. But it's just a matter of acknowledging what's going on and being empathetic. I think things like that kind of goes a long way in terms of understanding things that you may not have been exposed to or experienced.
Chris, it's almost like this time feels different. It feels like maybe this time there is some hope for some change, but we felt that before probably, and nothing's really changed. So it's June 4th. It feels like maybe there's time for change. What has to happen for there to be some change by, say, June 4th, 2021?
You got to do the work. I think a lot of things like this, especially in the age of social media and people voicing their opinions, I think that's where it starts, but that's certainly not where it should end. I think, and I would encourage people to actually take pride in doing the work. And obviously there's many ways that people could go about that, whether it be donating to certain causes, whether it be actually going into these communities and helping to facilitate relationships or community relations between cops and people of color. Things like that is what I mean by doing the work. So that's something that I definitely take pride in and something that I'm excited to, be a part of.
Do you feel that there's a little bit of hope right now or not really?
In regards to?
That maybe something will finally change.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of momentum right now. I think to my memory, as long as I've been living, I've never witnessed something like this on this magnitude. And I think definitely there's momentum and definitely it's sparking conversations, uncomfortable conversations, but conversations that need to be had. And that's a start. I could hang my hat on that, but again, that's not where it ends.
Chris, I was wondering for you, why was it so important to go out and protest and be in that go and walk with people in Charlotte?
Well, I felt that it was very important just for us to, show everyone that we're supportive of this, and this is something that we take pride in as well. And I think oftentimes, especially athletes and people in our positions, sometimes it's one of those things where you think about it, should you do it, should you not? But Shaq reached out to me too as well, and you know, offered, if I would like to join in as well. And it was kind of a no-brainer, well, a semi-no-brainer because we're still in the midst of a pandemic. But it was something that I decided on doing, and it was a great turnout. It was peaceful. There was no violence, and I think that people's voices were definitely heard in a way that South Park hasn't seen before.
Chris, this team has had a number of leaders over the years, but I'm wondering what specific impact Eric Reid had on the team, especially maybe some of the younger guys.
Well, I could admire Eric for, again, standing up for something that he believed in and not being afraid to speak about it. That's something that a lot of young guys or incoming young guys could see and know that it shouldn't be sometimes you're stuck in a bind, especially as a young player or even a player in general, that you don't want to speak out in a way that's going to offend people or jeopardize your situation. So having him in the locker room last year, you could admire somebody like that who's not afraid of speaking up and who's not afraid of engaging in those type of conversations.
Hey, Chris, you talked about having important conversations, sometimes uncomfortable conversations. I want to go back to Monday. Did you have important conversations, whether it's with fellow demonstrators or just people who were maybe standing by watching the crowd march through the streets? Did you have any sort of important conversations that day?
During the protest, or?
Yeah, whether it was before everything got started or during or after. I mean, that was certainly an opportunity to further the conversation, so to speak.
Absolutely. I've had lots of conversations with my Black and white counterparts within the team and within the NFL. And obviously everybody has a different perspective. In having these conversations, it's kind of more important to listen than to speak and wait for your turn, but to also hear perspectives of everybody else and not to undermine the experiences that some people have gone through. I may have been somebody that has never been held at gunpoint by a cop, but who am I to undermine that experience to somebody else? So I think it's just a matter of understanding and empathizing and listening to each other's perspectives.
Chris, this is
Andre described Shaq emerging as a social justice leader.
One more time, I'm sorry.
Andre described Shaq as emerging as a social justice leader on the team. What is your take on Shaq's evolution as in that role, and is that something that you expect him to really welcome the rookies into and say, this is where things stand, it's something you should be a part of?
Absolutely. And I may look at things from another standpoint of, there's several ways to lead. That's one way of doing it, what you just expressed, but you could also lead by example. Sometimes you don't have to force anybody to do certain things, but just your presence alone and being an example. Some players or younger players especially might look at that and say, hey, you know what? I'm on board as well. And that just carries, just as, much weight as anything else.
Chris, do you feel like that kind of weight that you guys carry as NFL players and the way that you can set an example for, fans or people that are not NFL players, they see you guys out there protesting and trying to make a change that might inspire them. Is that kind of the goal behind going out and protesting?
Yeah, that's a part of the goal. But again, part of it for me is just trying to facilitate these conversations. Sometimes you have to do certain things outside of your comfort zone to, get the attention of others to even try to have these conversations. Now, you might have some people that don't want to have the conversation altogether, and that's outside of your control. But for those that want to learn and want to try to understand, it's important. And, it certainly helps.
Chris, this is Deshawn. What do you feel about what you see happening in the world around you?
To be honest with you, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. I try not to, in times like these, especially with social media and the news, you kind of have to, filter it for yourself, for your mental health, because it's not, in my eyes, it's not good to constantly watch negative things. It's always going to brew negative thoughts in a way. So it's definitely overwhelming, Deshawn, but it's one of those things that it's definitely something that's going to be written down in the history books, and we're going to be looking back at this moment decades down the line, and time will tell if what we're doing is going to be conducive for the big picture or not. So.
If I could follow up on that just quickly, is there something from your own personal experience that resonates with you so personally right now?
I think it's just allowing other people to understand a Black person's perspective. And if before there wasn't a time to have it, now might be the best time to have these conversations. There's a lot of companies, a lot of corporations, a lot of organizations that's putting out and acknowledging these things. And, I hope that it's more than just a one-time thing, but also a continued conversation. And in my opinion, that's probably the biggest way, one of the bigger ways to really go about this situation and changing things.
Chris, David Newton again. We don't hear about your group very often or what it's doing. So unless there are tough times like this, what do you feel most proud about what you guys have accomplished so far? And what do you want to accomplish moving forward?
I want to continue doing the work that we've done. And I'm sure you guys seen and were involved with and covered some of the work that we've done in the past, whether it be, bail projects. We're working on a few things right now as far as just having a plan in place to help facilitate community relations with officers and doing things and getting into the community and doing things like that, just to, in a way, I look at that as doing my part, and obviously it's going to take a collective effort beyond the, Player Impact Committee of the Carolina Panthers, but it's just a means for doing our part.
What do you feel like you have to do as far as relations with officers? What can be done there?
I think there's a big void in terms of mistrust within our community with police officers for obvious reasons. So that certainly does not help the situation altogether. But I think forging good relationships with police officers may be able to help later on down the line. I think both sides, there's things that needs to be fixed altogether, but initiatives like that can certainly help. I don't see that hurting.
Chris, there was a report out that, and I apologize, changing topics just slightly, that 5 Alabama players have tested positive for COVID after a group workout sometime recently. When you hear things like that, what does that make you? How does that make you feel about the potential of playing football this fall?
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of anxiety there, obviously, and assuming that there is an NFL season, I'm sure there will be, testing and things like that, just to make sure everyone is okay and make sure everyone is healthy for the most part. But it's definitely one of those things where it's, you know, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard because we're in a situation right now where, you know, you could be anywhere and you could contract the virus and you may not even know until after the fact. So it's definitely nerve-wracking a little bit.